again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Can't Wait. Sounds terrible. We love Chicago and Illinois politics and the media and all the folks who make it a great spectator sport. We're sponsored by Eleni's new nonprofit, Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. She's busy with that charity at this hour. And we're also sponsored by Facebook Emojis. I give a like to my friends here on the podcast, producer Grace, behind the glass, Rachel, Natalie, Patrick. I'm Dennis, and we're going to start in Springfield, where it seems things are really terrible. Idle minds are the devil's workshop, especially if you're a House Democrat, it seems, and especially if you have access to social media. So, we talked about the rough summer they were having recently. Last week, Representative Carol Ammons and her husband were indicted in federal court downstate. And then House Representative Harry Benton of Plainfield was kind of hanging out there for a few weeks. He was ultimately, this month, forced out by the Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch after an ethics investigation. It turns out that Representative Benton was allegedly harassing women, especially staff, and it appears, according to published reports, at least one unnamed woman lobbyist. The allegation surfaced 3 years ago. The Speaker's office apparently referred it to the Legislative Inspector General, a guy by the name of Michael McCuskey. McCuskey concluded his report earlier this month, which then prompted the Speaker to call for Benton's resignation, which Benton did right before July 4th. And he stepped out of the re-election process since he is currently up for re-election for the upcoming fall elections. McCuskey, the Legislative Inspector General, issued his private report to the Speaker's office. And the 8-member, this is according to the Tribune, Legislative Ethics Commission, made up of Republicans and Democratic lawmakers, is weighing whether to make the report public. One of the things that I found interesting, Natalie, is that the governor swiftly weighed in, with the Tribune reporting that Governor J.B. Pritzker called on members of the State Legislative Ethics Commission to publicly release an Inspector General's investigative report of misconduct. Pritzker's call for the report comes as members of the Illinois House Democratic majority, particularly women within the caucus, deliberated the details revealed in a Tribune investigation. And we'll get to that investigation in a second. The governor's office, in a statement, said, quote, the governor had not seen the Legislative Inspector General's report, but supports transparency and accountability and believes the release of the report would be in the best interest of the public. Natalie, that's a pretty quick heave-ho.
Yeah, it was quite speedy. But we've unfortunately seen this movie before. This is like a bad version of Groundhog's Day, and there's the manual on how not to do this. And it seems that certain players are following that one, and the governor's office is clearly trying to stay away from this and keep the hot potato in Speaker Welch's hands. So made the move quickly and calling for transparency.
I haven't read the report, but it ought to be public. So about that, putting it back on the Speaker's plate, Natalie and Rachel and Patrick, as Brent Musburger, Google him kids, used to say at big sporting events when he was a play-by-play broadcaster, there's another story here. So the same Tribune stories, and there have been several, reported separately. The Tribune investigation found documents showing that Welch responded to social media posts made by the former staffer to Harry Benton, who had once served as an intern in the Speaker's office, those social media responses made her feel, quote unquote, uncomfortable. The Speaker's office issued a pair of statements defending its handling of the allegations involving Benton, saying appropriate action was taken at all times. Though the statements did not disclose what, if any, disciplinary action was taken in 2023, the Speaker's office also said the former staffer, this is all from the Tribune, was not an employee of Welsh's office at the time of their social media interactions, and that their, quote, cordial relationship predated Representative Benton, with dialogues spanning from advice, support, and even the former intern offering tips for the Speaker and his wife's travel itinerary. So there you have it, Rachel.
I think that is unfortunately an all too common experience for young women who work in Springfield. And it's not big stuff, it's not aggressive stuff, it's weird little comments here and there. It's reactions to social media posts. It's exactly that kind of stuff that you're seeing. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it kind of hard for young women to go to Springfield and not sometimes walk away feeling frustrated and kind of downtrodden because they went there to do a job because they wanted to get into politics. And when they got there, they found out it looked a little bit different than they wanted to, and it doesn't have to be big actions. It can be small things like that that can really leave a bad taste in your mouth. And that's really unfortunate that that's still part of the culture.
For you old lawmakers out there, and you young lawmakers, stay the heck off social media and liking and firing and smiley emojis, sizzling emojis. So, Patrick, the Tribune is not letting go, nor is Capital Facts. Capital Facts had a headline this week. What did he know and when did he know it? About referring to the Speaker. So, look, Team Tribune seems to be on this, and Miller seems to be on this in a way that perhaps indicates they believe there's more here than a few social media responses that are making people feel a little cringy. The Tribune's got 3 reporters on it. Rick Pearson, veteran political reporter, Olivia Olander, and Jeremy Gorner, continuing to pull the threads, which tells me that there is some tension between the Tribune and the Speaker's office. So, seems to me that we're going to have a special session on the Bears any minute now, Patrick.
Well, yes. What other calamities could we describe that we need to have a legislative session to distract from said issues? But I hope everyone has renewed their subscriptions to the Chicago Tribune and to Capital Facts, because I think you're right. I don't think this is the end of the story. I was looking quickly at it. I think Isabel posted yesterday that since the allegation first came to light, the House Democrats put $1.4 million into Henry Benton's campaign. That would be research indicating the Millers also are not, the reporting duo of the Millers are not stopping at this, is to figure out if there is accountability concern. How did this whole story play out? So let's get some popcorn, let's watch, and if folks have information, I'm sure we'll read about it in the Tribune, Sun Times, Capital Facts, somewhere else soon.
Natalie, the Democrats down there in Plainfield and Will County have not wasted any time. They have already named a replacement to run for Benton's spot. It's a woman named Jessica Dixon Heitman. Couple things about Jessica Dixon Heitman. She worked as a contract employee in Representative Benton's office, the former Representative Benton, now just the regular guy with some domestic issues. She worked with the young female staff member who detailed numerous harassment allegations against him. So she's getting ready to turn the page, and she is quoted to the Tribune last night or earlier this week saying, over the years, I've heard people say that we need to change the culture in Springfield. I believe the problem is not just the culture, it's our inadequate laws that allow the toxic culture to flourish. So we just need more laws.
More task forces, more committees, more laws, or, just decent people who know how to behave like adults.
So she's clearly trying to move on, move the debate forward, and she's in a tough spot because she was right there in the front row watching what may or may not have transpired with the former Representative Benton. But meanwhile, she is the new candidate, and she's got to stand on her own, and she has a history of being involved in her family, being involved in politics, because she is the granddaughter of former U.S. Senator Al the Pal Dixon. Natalie, ask your grandfather about Al the Pal Dixon. He was senator for more than 12 years. He was pushed out of office in 1992 over another sort of dust-up involving gender and racial issues, in that he voted to confirm Clarence Thomas. And that led to the election of another great Illinois senator, Carol Moseley Braun. But after Al left office, he wrote a memoir that was reviewed by roll call. And if anyone wants to do a Patrick-like deep dive on the interwebs, you should find this review because it's quite humorous. So the writer says, let me mention a fellow who used to be in the Senate. Alan Dixon is his name, but people call him Al the Pal. The Senate may never have seen a more practiced backslapper and glad-hander, and that's saying something. Al was turfed out of office by his own Democratic Party in 1992. He spent 40 years winning elections, but he sure didn't see that one coming. Now Al has written a book. Never let it be said that a man is more thoughtful and articulate in print than he is in real life. Anyway, he was sort of a one of a kind. The quote from Al about the Clarence Thomas vote says, generally speaking, my political career was built on goodwill and accommodation. So the reviewer says, and so when Al's goodwill and accommodation brought him to vote to confirm Clarence Thomas for a seat on the Supreme Court, his luck ran out and his party chose Carol Moseley Braun. Al goes home to Southern Illinois, and that's what happened to Al. So a little bit of history on the new woman who is running for state representative in the district formerly held by Harry Benton. As you mentioned at the top of our show, Eleni has started a new not-for-profit called Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. So do you have any, as we move from the Benton matter and the Welch matter and the Pritzker matter, do you have any closing thoughts on your new charity?
Yeah, it's not a fence problem, so I'm not sure where we brought the fence into the equation. It's a tree problem. And yeah, it's not great.
It's a
It'll be
metaphor.
interesting, though, going back to what you were discussing about the new state rep. I feel like we've seen in these, very contentious situations where new reps are getting appointed because of controversy, some of these individuals haven't lasted very long. So it'll be interesting to see. I already saw that they're trying to tie her to some of the stuff that was already happening, and maybe she knew, maybe she didn't. It's a stretch, but it'll just be interesting to see if she gets anointed for the long term, or if this is just a short-term fix.
Well,
Her
one thing,
genetics speak to, Dixon won 29 elections in a row. He did lose the last one, so you're only as good as your last election. But if she's got any of that family luck, 29-1 is a little bit better than the Cubs or the White Sox.
we'll be returning to the Cubs a little bit later in this show. So whatever happens with Al the Pal's granddaughter, there is a possibility, Rachel, that as it turns out, she could get endorsed by the Illinois AFL-CIO. So recently, they were quite angry with some of the developments this past session. And the AFL-CIO said, we're out of the endorsement business. Well, 30 days later, all better. The labor organization has now endorsed Governor Pritzker's reelection, as well as Democrats for all statewide offices, and an overwhelming number of Democrats running for state legislative seats. Leader Tim Dre said, we just went in to say, hey, we want to be heard. The frustrations that we had were answered, and it's time to move on and work towards better policies for working families. Happily ever after.
I mean, I don't know if I'd exactly call it happily ever after, but, you know, they made their point and they decided not to sit this one out. I think that's not entirely unexpected that they would ultimately make endorsements. I think what I'll be curious to see is where those endorsements make a big difference, right? Them endorsing a bunch of Democrats, not surprising at all. There are a few Republicans they also endorsed, though. And that looks great on a mailer, but whether or not that comes with some boots on the ground, you know, help with GOTV knocking doors, some other support could make a big difference in some of those swing districts. So I'll be curious to see as the fall unfolds, you know, what that support actually looks like for some of those members.
Right. How made up are they? How have they put this past them? We shall see. You know, it's difficult to be a legislative leader or a mayor or a governor, and we have a few yucks here on this show at their expense. But no job is more difficult, in my book, than being head of the Illinois Republican Party. So, Patrick, we got to know, just incidentally, the new Illinois Republican Party chair, Bob Grogan. He's a DuPage County Republican. He did an interview with the Chicago Sun-Times, and I have to give him credit. He had some great sound bites. I don't know him that well. You know him better, Patrick. He's pretty much acknowledging how difficult the job is. He just stepped into the role this summer. One of the things that, of course, the Sun-Times posed to him is Donald Trump's impact on the Illinois Republican Party here in this deeply blue state. And his quote was, "We share a lot of the same goals. We definitely don't share a style," the Downers Grove resident said, referring to President Trump. "I come from a totally different background. I'm a boring CPA. He's a reality TV show New York real estate developer. But he's got the hardest job in the world, and I probably have the second hardest job in the world, being chairman of the Illinois Republican Party."
I think using the word job and the Illinois Republican Party is a bit of an oxymoron. It's more to Eleni's fences make good neighbors. It's more of an act of a nonprofit service, I believe, doing the role with 7 rolls of duct tape and some intuition. But as we've talked about, whether it's city council races, state races, whatever, democracy only works when there's opposition. And I do think Bob is sincere in his effort to want to help rejuvenate some of the grassroots, and his commentary about relying on billionaires to fund your party is a cautionary tale for any state political party, because they can move.
Well, good luck to Mr. Grogan. I think, speaking of good luck, that brings us to the Schadenfreude portion of our show, and that is sounds terrible, producer Grace. Natalie, let's start with you, because we need to give Eleni just another minute to really get her terribleness articulated.
I probably can't top Eleni. There's no kids pooping in pools or anything near my house, but I have to go to the dentist today. So that pretty much, it's just, I couldn't think of anything worse than that. So that's my afternoon.
Okay. Rinse. All right, Eleni, you came in hot let's hear about what sounds terrible for you this week.
I'm just gonna go with neighbors, even the good ones. You always find something that doesn't jive, even when they're friendly. But I am very irate at the moment that I have any neighbors at all. So, contemplating moving any day now. Any minute, might move by the end of today. Never know.
Plainfield is trending, and there might be some
Yeah.
open spaces. There may be even some more open
So is
spaces.
Hammond.
Yeah, Hammond's got some great spots. I can, though the market is hot there now, so I don't know if I can afford it.
Well, the topography is fun.
There's a 236-acre parcel in Arlington Heights that may sit idle. I mean, there's no neighbors for miles.
I could probably
It's a
get a
blank.
deal.
Blank canvas.
Mhm.
All right, Patrick, since you chimed in, what sounds terrible to you?
Well, what sounds terrible is my good friend Larry the Cat, who is chief mouser to the cabinet at number 10 Downing Street. In his service, preventing the mice in the prime minister's residence, is now on to his 7th prime minister since 2016. For all of us lamenting the state of American affairs, our chief executive has not turned over 7 times since 2016. But also, fun fact coming out next Tuesday, you too can pick up your petition to run for alderman of the city of Chicago. It only requires 473 valid signatures to put your name on the ballot. So for all of us who love Eleni, let's just have a party. 473 of us, we too could put her on the ballot, and this could become a true political revival. And we only have until October 26th to get all 473 signatures to get Eleni on the ballot. But I'm positive we can do it and get that change that we need at City Hall.
She might have to recuse herself from the show, but it would take this show in a whole new direction in terms of content. Rachel, what's terrible to you?
Yeah, so I'm going to turn back for just a second to a piece of this whole Benton situation that we didn't really talk about today, which is the process of actually releasing that report, right? Governor's called for it to be released. A lot of legislators are calling for it to be released, and it goes back to like a fundamental problem with how we police our elected officials, right? When Carol Pope was the legislative inspector general, she notoriously called the office a paper tiger, right? Highlighted a whole bunch of fixes that were needed for a truly independent legislative inspector general, and they've made some modest fixes, right? I think the LEG doesn't need approval from the Legislative Ethics Commission, which is appointed by legislative leaders and made up of legislators, to open an investigation anymore. If you go to her and say, you know, I have evidence of wrongdoing for a state employee or a legislator, she can open those the current LIG can open those investigations. So like that's a modest fix, but there's still some pretty serious transparency issues, right? Like right now, for the Benton report to be released, to have true transparency for the public, the Legislative Ethics Commission, which like I said is made up of legislators, has to vote to release it. The legislative inspector general can't do it. In fact, the only time the legislative inspector general can actually release a report, I believe, is if a legislative employee has been found to commit like serious misconduct that leads them to be terminated, right? So that's the only time. So like highlights kind of an issue there that like the public has a lot of reasons not to trust their legislature. A structure where a council of legislators decides whether or not reports about them get released, but reports about employees can get released under different circumstances doesn't help any of that, right? But I think we've seen in the past when this kind of stuff comes up, that's when you tend to see some of those ethics laws revisited. So I wouldn't be surprised next spring to see a push for some of this stuff. I hope we see a push for some of this stuff to be corrected, because not a great situation right now.
Staffers are expendable. Well, my sounds terrible is a little bit complicated because it's not totally terrible, but it leaves me in a terrible spot. So on this show, I have unknowingly predicted the future several times. Eleni has done a good job of documenting that. Well, someone is challenging my title. And this goes to Cubs game from last weekend. You know, Cubs have had fans on the edge of their seats all season. Winning streaks, losing streaks, another winning streak, another losing streak. Also, Cubs fans celebrated the 10th anniversary of the 2016 World Series champions this past weekend. Hot summer day. And on Saturday, the Cubs took on the Minnesota Twins and jumped out to an early lead. But typical of the Cubs, the Twins were threatening to get the tying run up at the plate in the ninth inning. Now, a friend of millions of Cub fans, former Cubs pitcher Ryan Dempster was in the booth on Saturday, and the Cubs had a pretty good lead. But all of a sudden, there's a couple guys on base, and the next man up was going to be the tying run. And Dempster says, and producer Grace is going to play an amazing clip here of it in a second. Dempster says, "You know what I love? I love double plays." Ball was hit by third baseman Brooks Lee. He hit a line drive to center field that caromed off the glove of Pete Crow Armstrong. PCA, as we call him, rifled the ball to our second baseman, Nico Horner, beyond the infield. He whipped it home to Miguel Amaya, the catcher, who then threw it, because we had a runner coming around third, so he threw the ball to third baseman Alex Bregman, who tagged Josh Bell, who was heading around third, to home when he got caught. Then after he tagged Bell, he threw the ball over to Michael Bush, our first baseman, who caught that runner not getting back to first base in time to get the second out. Craig Counsell said, "I wouldn't credit our defense too much there, but we did get the ball to the right place." And you'll see here in this replay whether it makes sense.
You know what I love more than strikeouts?
Tell me.
Double plays.
Yeah. It's ripped out towards right center field. And PCA not able to come up with it. And now they got a whole bunch of runners jammed up. Throw to third, tag out. Back to first. I said I like double plays, Boog.
Now, if you were keeping score, like I was geeking out that day at the ballpark, trying to keep score, that is, for you young baseball geeks out there, that's an 8-4-2-5-5-3 double play. Or is that the numbers you should play in Powerball, Patrick? I don't know. So that's terrible because that's very complicated. And all of us in our section had to kind of double check how we should score that. But at the end of the day, Boog Shambi, as you'll hear here, says, that's about as great a double play as you'll ever see. Just 20 seconds after Ryan Dempster said, I love a great double play. So he got a great double play. He's stealing the title from me of Nostradamus. He's now Dempstradamus. And at least the Cubs got a win. And we're going to continue nail-biting Natalie for the rest of the season, I fear. So fasten your seatbelts. It sounds terrible.
The Luce brothers went on Sunday and they won 10-2. So I'm just putting this out there for Mr. Ricketts and Mr. Counsell. They might want to consider having the Luce boys. Anytime we've gone, last time they were playing the Blue Jays, 16-1 or 2, I can't remember. Grand Slam, like ridiculous. So just saying, if there's tickets in October, send
More
them
loose.
in.
More loose. Less complaining. That's going to be the key to getting a repeat of a World Series championship on the north side of Chicago. That may sound more confusing than terrible, but it's often terrible to be a Cubs fan. So I just needed to get that off my chest. And Ryan Dempster, stay in your lane, dude. I'm the one that predicts things around here. Well, that's our terrible report for today. Next week, we have a very, very special Can't Wait Sounds Terrible plan for you. But until then, that's Eleni, that's Natalie, that's Patrick, that's Rachel, producer Grace somewhere behind the glass spinning the dials. We thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.